Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm glad you guys are back for a brand new video. This week we're going to be making stuffed calabasitas, stuffed zucchini or squash, as some people may know them as well. For this video we're going to be referring to them as calabasitas. We're going to be making a delicious and easy recipe on how to make them stuffed with cheese. This recipe is very easy to make, but it does take some prepping time to do, so it's not an easy recipe that you can make in just a few minutes. This recipe probably takes about an hour to an hour and a half to make. But before we get started with today's recipe, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to our channel. Leave a comment down below with any other suggestions on recipes you would want me to make in the future, any questions that you might have on the video, and I will answer you back with another comment. Give this video a big thumbs up if you liked it, share with your friends if you loved it. And for this week's recipe, our ingredients are going to be 8 small and thin calabasitas, 6 tomatoes, 5 large eggs, half an onion, 4 serrano peppers or jalapenos, 2 garlic cloves, queso fresco, you can also use mozzarella, a pinch of salt, and flour. On a big pot with water, I'm going to be adding a little bit of salt and my calabasitas. I'm going to cover this and put it on the stove on medium heat. I'm going to be boiling this between 8 to 10 minutes depending on how fast my calabasitas cook. Now if you get the fat calabasitas, those are going to take longer for them to cook. And while we have that on the stove on medium heat, we're going to cover it and we're going to start by cutting our cheese. For our cheese, I'm going to be using the Queso Panela El Mexicano brand, but you can use any type of cheese that you would want. You can also use the mozzarella cheese. Just make sure you close the edges down so whenever the mozzarella melts, it doesn't get out of the calabasitas. I'm going to be using this potato peeler to help me take the stuffing out of the calabasitas. So this is how big I'm going to be making the hole on the calabasita. I'm going to be measuring the width of the cheese, that way I know it has enough space for the cheese to fit inside the calabasitas. For this cheese brand, is just cutting it down the middle. Now that I have my cheese ready and it's been about 10 minutes, I'm going to check on my calabasitas. As you can see, they have started to boil. I'm going to take one out of the water and I'm going to check if it's ready. With a toothpick, I'm going to insert it in the middle of the calabasita, more towards the thicker part of it. If the toothpick slides in easily, that means it's ready. Also, if you squeeze it, it should be soft and it should be very flexible. At this time, I'm going to be taking all the calabasitas out of the water. Do not keep them in the water because since the water is hot, it is boiling. It's going to continue to cook the calabasitas and you don't want them to be very soft. You still want them firm. As you can see, it's very squishy and it's very flexible. I can move it around very easily. I'm going to start off by cutting off the ends of it, just the ends. Don't cut anything else. And once that is ready, I'm going to be inserting the potato peeler in the middle of the calabasitas all the way in and then going around. At first, this may seem like it's not very easy, but I promise you, you're going to get the hang of it. For my first one, it kind of took me a couple tries before I was able to take the insides out. Just make sure that you keep twisting your calabasitas around and then kind of pulling the potato peeler out. That's going to help the inside of the calabasitas soften up. And don't throw the inside of the calabasitas. We're going to be using that later on the recipe as well. Make sure when you're taking the stuffing out of the calabasitas, you're not going all the way through on the other side. We don't want to have 2 holes at the end of our calabasitas. We just want 1 hole to create kind of like a little cave for our cheese to go in. Also, you don't want to go too close to the edges of the calabasitas. It's just down on the middle to where our cheese can fit. Once we have all of the ends of our calabasitas out, we're going to continue stuffing our calabasitas with some cheese. Now the length of our cheese was a little bit bigger than our calabasitas, so I'm just going to be cutting that end out, and I'm going to repeat the same process with every single calabasita, just stuffing them and taking out any excess cheese that we don't need. Once I have all of our calabasitas stuffed, I'm going to be drying them because we are going to be rolling them on flour, and if the calabasitas are wet or the area where the calabasitas are laying down is wet, it's going to make our flour wet and it's going to turn into dough. Once I have my calabasitas semi-dry, I'm going to be rolling them into flour, getting flour all over the calabasitas, but not getting too much flour in it, just a very light coat. This is so the egg is able to stick to the calabasitas whenever we're going to be frying them. Once we have our calabasitas covered in flour, we're going to continue with the eggs. With the 5 eggs, we're going to separate the egg yolks with the egg whites. Make sure you keep them in 2 separate containers We are going to do the egg whites first. We're going to get our hand mixture and mix the egg whites first. If you have a stand mixture, you can use this as well. Make sure that this step you don't do in advance. This step you should be doing it once you have your calabacitas already rolled in flour, because the egg whites, whenever they stuffed up, as soon as you're done with that, you should be going to the stove right there and then. If you wait, the egg whites are gonna become liquid again, and that's not gonna work. It's not gonna work for the recipe. So make sure you do this step whenever you're ready to go to the stove with your calabacitas. You know your egg whites are ready whenever they start to make stiff peaks, and you should be able to turn your container around and the egg whites don't come out. Once that happens, we're going to be adding our egg yolks directly to the mixture, and we're going to be mixing for just a few seconds. You don't want to over mix, because if you over mix, it's going to turn liquid again. I'm only going to be mixing this until my egg whites and my egg yolks are combined together. This took me about 20 seconds. Once I have that ready, I'm going to be moving directly to the stove. On a flat skillet, I'm going to be adding between half a cup and 1 cup of olive oil, depending on how big and deep your skillet is. You want quite a bit of oil on this, but not too much. Once we have the oil heat up, we're going to be putting one big spoon of this mixture into the pan, and we're going to be placing our calabacita directly on top of it. We're going to let that fry for about 5 seconds, and after that, with the help of a spatula, I'm going to be pushing the sides into the calabacita. With the help of a flour, it should be easy for the egg to stick to the calabacita. Just keep flipping until all of the calabacita is covered with the egg. If you need help, you can also use some tongs for this. You don't have to do it all with the spatula like I did here. And we're going to continue that same process for all of our calabacitas. We're going to be adding a little bit of egg into the skillet, placing the calabacita in the middle of it, and then with the help of a spatula, rolling the calabacita and the egg so the calabacita can be all covered in the egg wash. If this technique doesn't work for you, you can also dip the calabacita directly into the eggs. Make sure it's completely covered, and then putting the calabacita covered in egg into the skillet with the hot oil. That's another way that you can also do it if this technique that I'm showing you in the video, it's not working for you. You're going to know that this is ready whenever all the egg around is brown. That's the color that we want, and make sure you don't burn it. And also, it doesn't need to be fully cooked, because we are going to be dropping this in some sauce, and the sauce is going to finish cooking the egg if it's not completely cooked at this time. Also, be careful, since the calabacitas may still have some water in them, and you don't cover all the edges of the calabacitas, especially where we made the hole to put the cheese inside. That may drop some water into your oil, and it could cause the oil to bubble up, and it starts to get all over your stove, and it might burn you as well. So be very careful with that. Once I have my calabacitas covered in egg, I'm going to remove them from the oil, and we're going to go ahead and finish the rest of this, and we're going to see you on the next step. For this sauce, I'm going to be adding 2 garlic cloves, 1/4 of a small white onion, and there's 6 tomatoes cut into fourths, and we're going to be dropping our serranos in here as well. We're going to be adding 1 tablespoon of salt, and now this is where the inside of the calabacita comes in. You can throw this away, but since this has a nutritious part in here as well, and it's something that we can use for the recipe, I'm going to be throwing it in the sauce. We're also going to be adding 2 cups of the water where we boiled our calabacitas. We're going to blend this very good for about 2 to 3 minutes. And once we have that ready on our deeper pan, we're going to be adding a little bit of oil. Once the oil is heat up, we're going to be adding some diced onion into here, and we're going to get our onion very caramelized. You want to make sure your onion is a translucent color so it can get all the flavor really out on the oil. Once we have our onion sauteed, we're going to be dropping the sauce into the pan, and we're going to be covering the sauce for 10 minutes. What we're looking for is for the sauce to be fully cooked before we drop our calabacitas in there. 10 minutes later, and this is how our sauce looks like. As you can see, at first the sauce was like a light pink color. Now it's more like an orangey color. That's what we're looking for. After the sauce has been boiling for 10 minutes, we are going to be adding our calabacitas in here. I'm going to be adding all 9 of my calabacitas in here. Once we have them in the pan, we're going to be covering them with some sauce. With the help of a spoon, we're going to be pushing them down. That way the sauce can get into all the calabacitas. We're going to cover our pan, and we're going to leave this here boiling for about 5 minutes. What this is going to do is going to incorporate the sauce with the eggs, and it's going to help the egg finish cooking if it didn't cook all the way while we were frying our eggs. 5 minutes later, we're gonna open this up and we're gonna check for salt. My calabasitas were missing a little bit of salt, so I'm gonna be adding a little bit more of salt to this, but every person's gonna be different. If you feel like you don't need salt, you don't have to add it, or you can also use some chicken flavor bouillon if you would want. I'm gonna be using more salt for this, and with the help of a spoon, we're gonna be grabbing some sauce and then just tossing it all over the calabasitas to help the salt dissolve a little bit faster. We are going to be covering this up again and leaving it boiling here for another 5 minutes. Make sure that you don't over boil your calabasitas again in the sauce, just because it is going to make your calabasitas way soft, and this dish is not going to work. You want to boil your calabasitas between 5 to 8 more minutes when you add them to the sauce. And this is the end result for our calabasitas. This is how our calabasitas turned out. I cut one of them in half for you so you guys can see it from the inside. I'm pairing this with a little bit of white rice with vegetables. This recipe is perfect right now that we are in Lent, not right now that we're not eating meat on Fridays, for those of you who are Catholic. It was an easy recipe, but it did take some time to make, so make sure you do have some time in advance saved for this recipe whenever you are going to make it. But I promise you guys, if you guys make this recipe, you guys are not gonna regret it. And this is it for today's video. Don't forget to give it a big thumbs up if you liked it, share with your friends if you loved it, leave me a comment down below on your thoughts of this recipe, any questions or suggestions for any future videos. I will do my best to reply to you as soon as possible. Remember, if you love this recipe, share with your friends and family, subscribe to your channel for any future recipes, and we'll see you guys next week with a brand new recipe. Bye!